feeler's been put out. I did see my research at the All-State Arena in Chi-Town. You take on Shelton Benjamin in a dark match on the 11th of March, 2008. But then I don't see that you don't actually debut in the WWE until July 8th. Was this just like a dark match, just to a tryout or something like that? Or when was it that you actually were signed to the company?
I think I signed in January, so it was pretty quick. I mean, from when I left TNA and then had my contract with WWE, it was all went down in January. I think my last date, I think you even said it with Judas, was in beginning of January, and by the end of January, I was signed. So it happened pretty quick.
Wow. Okay.
It
was January 7th.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was January 7th, the match with Judas. So yeah, it's only a few weeks after that.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess. I said home for a month. They brought me in. My first event was, I think you just said Chicago.
Yep.
Yeah, Shelton, which I think that's a normal thing. I mean, I wasn't, to put a new talent in a dark match. That was, I think that that's a regular thing they would do just to kind of check you out, feel you out. I don't think it was a great match. Looking back on it, I haven't watched it in a long time, but I kind of feel like Shelton was kind of going through a time right then. I mean, he had been with the company for a long time, and they weren't really doing a whole lot with him. So maybe he was going through a frustrating time for himself, and then he gets put in a dark match with a new signee. So he may not have had been in the best moods. So I don't think it was a great match, but we got through it. I'm not sure what they saw, if they were happy, but and I've said this many a times. I don't know if they even had any direction. I don't know what their thinking was. But I did start making some trips down to Tampa. This is before NXT. It was Florida Championship Wrestling, where that was their developmental territory down there. So I did start making some trips down there, and I started training with those guys every day, taking bumps every day. I mean, I felt like I was back in my normal training days. So once in a while, I would be brought to TV, but there wasn't a whole lot going on. Yeah, man, I don't really remember the timeline of all this. I just remember when I was there, whether it was down in Florida or being on the road. Like Florida, Tom Pritchard was down there, and he, when I was first there, the first days of being there, he made it like it was a big deal, and kind of put me over to the rest of the team there. When I was on the road, John Laurinaitis, was talking big things, to a lot of promises. So I was at first I was excited about being there. I felt like, okay, you got to be patient. You got to be patient in this business. So I'm just kind of waiting around and seeing what happens. And just weeks would go by, and each time it would go by, I kind of got a little bit more frustrated, especially after TV when they would send me back down to Tampa and going through the training all the time. I'm just not sure what direction we were taking. So, it started to get a little frustrating, and, I was, I was training, I was doing some of my best training, of my life. Then I was doing, in the gym twice a day, just trying to be ready for anything that they would want me to prepare for. So, but it was getting to be very frustrating. I was kind of wondering, what's going on? What are we doing? I'm just kind of lost in the shuffle here. And I think it wasn't until months later that they brought me in for a TV match. And then I think I did a skit in the back or something like that people still talk about today for not good reason.
Well,
but yeah, man, trying to shorten it down there, they had no idea what was going on. This is $1 billion company. They had no idea. Just to add to that, I was brought into up to Connecticut. I actually went up with Ron Killings because him and I signed at the exact same time. And
Right.
we went up there and had a tour of Titan Towers, and both of us separately had long meetings with the writing team. So, for hours, I was sitting there, communicating back and forth with them. And I felt like, we were bouncing some ideas off each other. And I felt like, okay, yeah, I remember walking out of that meeting feeling good. Like, okay, this was a good step, positive step. Let these guys do what they do best and get creative, and let's put something together. And absolutely nothing came of that. And, and then, I'm sure we'll get to it, but, getting to my debut on TV, it was just so blah. I mean, there was just nothing to it, and nobody cared. Just to give you an idea, Ron Killings and I signed at the exact same time. And if you remember, Ron had a brief run with WWE, so they were familiar with him, So I don't know if they necessarily looked at him as a TNA guy, because, there's been talk. I mean, it's been talk for years that, if you're not a WWE guy, if you're not a produced WWE guy, you're in trouble. I was obviously looked at it as a TNA guy. Well, Ron, they were kind of open arms to him. And just to give you some kind of contrast here, they sent a TV crew to his home. And I think he's in North Carolina. They sent a TV crew to his home and started filming some vignettes to show on TV to build up to Ron Kill or R-Truth to his debut. And, any of us old school wrestlers, we can look back. Vignettes are magic. I mean, they can really bring up a character. When they start debuting clips and vignettes week to week to week, build up to a debut of a character, I mean, it can really make everything. And so they did that with Ron. And so by the time Ron came out, and his music was his own, they let him use his own music. I think it was exciting. I mean, I loved when Ron debuted, and people really cared about it. And they were like, great, great new star here. And hell, he's still there today. But with me, there was nothing. There was nothing behind it. And the music was awful. But yeah, there was just nothing in the debut. I mean, there was no reason for people to care.
Yeah, and it's not off. It is often actually that I go on a little bit of a rant sometimes on the show.
I'm interested
because when I have my guests on my show, I like to put them up on a pedestal, and I know that there are times in a lot of professional wrestlers' careers where there's a lot of shit that's out of their control, yet down the line, especially with those toxic kind of, not just marks, but I like to call them skid marks, they will actually blame the talent and pick on them on the internet with a Twitter account that doesn't have their actual name or their actual picture in the profile picture, and then they will talk shit about people. But so this is why I like to go on these rants, because it's important for me to get this out there, because these interviews that I do, I feel I do the ultimate interview with anyone and everyone that I have on the show. And maybe I sound cocky, but I can back it up. So this is what I want to say. Okay, you're talking about the contrast between your debut and Ron Killings. He gets vignettes. He gets his own music that he gets to rap to on the way to the ring. The art of debuting a wrestler on television is letting the people at home know that might not have been watching TNA for years, know who this guy is. Figure out a character, spend a couple of hours to think of a direction and where you want that character or talent to be within 6 months to a year to 2 years. You should have a game plan for everybody that you are investing money in to draw money for your company. That's one thing that I wanted to bring up. It blows my mind that you can sign somebody to a contract that has so much promise and so much talent and not have a fucking game plan from day dot. And for you to sit at home from March of 2008 and not be brought to TV until July, and you're doing stuff in Florida Championship Wrestling, you're working your ass off. And for them to have that amount of time and not sit there and think of something to do with you other than fucking Braden Walker, who it's just a name. It's just two names put together. It's not a character. It's just a name. They didn't even get you to be Wildcat Chris Harris, which is what you were known as, because, oh, we need to come up with our own thing and so we can trademark it. Yet they bring guys in like CM Punk and he could be CM Punk, but then they bring in Colt Cabana and he has to be Scotty Goldman. These things happen all the time. Some people get favored and get given these opportunities, but other people, when they're brought in, they're not brought in with a game plan, and this is what they're given. And how are you supposed to make chicken salad out of chicken shit when you aren't doing any of the writing? You're just being told what to say in these segments backstage. This is what you're being given. You're doing it to the best of your ability, but you're only as good as the creative written for you. You're only as good as the content you were given. So for anyone out there that wants to disparage the name of Chris Harris for the run that he had as Braden Walker in the company, don't blame Chris Harris. You blame the company for not fucking knowing what they were doing and for doing wrong by somebody who had all the talent in the world to go as far as he could. That's my rant. Sorry, Chris, I had to say it.
Well, Karl, thank you. I appreciate all of that, and that felt good coming from another voice. The first thing I'll say, I'll bring up the name. I kind of went into the whole thing knowing just from WWE's history that Chris Harris was not going to make the company. So switching it to Braden Walker, I was actually like, okay, give me whatever you want. I'll make it work. That was just the confidence that I had. So even though we've heard funny stories in the past of where some of the talent had been given a list of names and some of those names are crazy. I kind of went through the exact same thing. There was some crazy names that were there, and I tried to throw in my input. But long story short, we came up with Braden Walker. I felt confident enough in my ability. I'll make it work. Let's just go with it and see where we go from here. But yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you with the thought process here. This big company and they have a team of writers. Like I remember days when it was just 2, 3, 4 people. They had a whole time. I mean, when I had that meeting, I lost count of how many people were in that meeting at this table. They have a team of writers, and that is their job to come up with something creative. If they had no idea who I was, which I realize I'm in a whole new audience, there's people that never watched TNA, have no idea who I am. I'm cool with that, but give them a reason to care about somebody new, whether it is vignettes or, if we're going to do these stupid backstage skits, let's at least make them make sense. We did these backstage skits and they were just throwing lines out as we went. They had nothing. They had nothing. I mean, and this is something that's happened in recent memory. My first TV match was, what was his name?
Armando Estrada.
Yeah, Armando. He's actually come out on a interview or podcast or something, and I felt like, like you brought up, a lot of people have, trashed me for the failure. And I'll take some responsibility for it, but people don't realize what went on behind the scenes. Well, Armando's been out there and he was in that room and he has backed me up without even knowing it, saying that, he felt bad for this new guy coming in and they were just feeding me lines and, this whole, might as well bring it up, but, Braden Walker, I'm going to knock your brains out. I mean, give me a break, man. That's awful. Yeah. But I was the new guy, man. I was going to do what I was told. And, so they say this and I'm like, of course I'm in my mind, I'm thinking that's awful. That's embarrassing. But they wanted me to say that. So yeah, I said that and people still all this time later, it's just amazing that, people still remember that part, but no thought put into it whatsoever. And not to throw somebody under the bus, but Bruce Pritchard was the producer of that skit. And in his defense, I know he was gone from the company not long after that. I know it was in 2008. So I don't know if he just wasn't feeling it, but he just seemed so disinterested in this whole skit. So he was no help. And the whoever else was in there feeding the lines, they were just giving the lines. But yeah, man, just no thought put into this whatsoever. And just to add to this, I felt like, okay, name, music, the look, the horrible backstage skits, whatever. Put me in the ring and I'll make up for it. Because I felt strong enough that just get me in the ring and I'll make up for it with my talent. Because I felt like I could have a good match with anybody. And if they could at least see that, add some character to it, and we got something. Just to add to that, when I had to go out for a match, they were telling me what to do and what not to do. I could not even be myself in the ring. They pretty much shut down every signature move I had, which, I'm willing. I mean, I've always heard this about, you got to adapt to the WWE style and it's a whole new world. And hey, I get that, man. I was willing to adapt to whatever I had to, just let me plug in and listen and keep my eyes open. And you tell me, how I can program myself into this style of wrestling or TV or whatever the case is. But man, I would go out there for my matches and I'd kind of have stuff in my head of what I was going to do. And sometimes a lot of the guys will go out during the day at the ring and kind of walk through a few things. I can't tell you how many times I would walk through a move and I'd have somebody stop me and say, "What are you doing? You can't do that." I mean, there were so many of my moves that were cut out. So I think the last match I had, I must have thrown 15 clotheslines because they wouldn't let me do anything else. It was unbelievable. And I mean, there was, a lot of guys had come up and said something like that. But for example, I'll just bring up this one move, but the catatonic, which is what I had done for years. Umaga had done a similar move to that. So I felt like, okay, out of respect, it's, that's what you do in the business. I went and talked to him, and he had been in TNA for a brief run. So, and I'd had some match with him. So I hung out with him. Maybe a cool guy. We got along great. I do have to say, he was a different person in WWE. So when I went to talk to him about it, and I explained to him, this is what I do. This is what I'd like to do they were going to put me over. So I had to come up with a good finish. So I said, this is what I do, and I've been doing it. I just want to talk to you about it. I don't remember the words I used, but pretty much asking, for his approval or permission, however you want to look at it, to do this move. And he just kind of looked at it like, I just felt like he was blowing me off with a roundabout no. I mean, he was saying, if you think you can get that over as a finish, it's a setup move for me, so it's not going to mean anything. And kind of dancing around the whole thing, but I took it as meaning, okay, this guy doesn't want me to do it, or he's setting me up to fail. I mean, I almost feel like if I'd have done it anyway, people would have come to me and said, "What are you doing?" I'd have got a heat for that. So, but yeah, man, I'm just, I couldn't even be myself in the ring. There were so many of my moves that were too similar to what other people were doing, so I had to cut that out. So I think my first match, I won with a crossbody off the top, which even that looked like shit. So it was just all around, man. I mean, like I said, I've tried to take enough responsibility myself for it. I was there. They always say, hey, talent will shine through, it'll break through. I felt like I had enough talent that I could have made something, but I just felt like there were so many things working against me. They just had no focus, no direction, no nothing. I mean, I don't, and I don't want to blame this on the whole TNA thing. A lot of people said, "Do you think you were labeled right when you went in?" Yeah, kind of. I do. I think at that time it was a lot different than it was a few years later. When they wanted to, shut TNA down. I'll use Monty Brown as another example.
Yeah.
Great talent. I think he was huge in TNA. They could have done something with him, and he went through the same kind of thing, name change, and they just had no direction for him, and he was out of there. Fortunately, years later, I don't know where the wake-up call was, where they finally were okay with acknowledging outside talent, hey, there's life outside of WWE because, the name that jumps to the top of the list is AJ. AJ broke through but they accepted AJ for what he had done in the past. He was AJ Styles. He got to be himself. Bobby Roode, Samoa Joe, Eric Young. I mean, these guys all came in as themselves and were able to be themselves. So I wasn't there, so I don't know where that breakthrough was. I'm glad it did because I love that all these guys went in and, was able to, make some good money for a brief period of time. AJ's at the top of his game. He definitely shone through and showed his talent. But, wherever that change happened, I'm glad it did. But unfortunately, I was in the wrong time, and there was no thought put into it whatsoever. So I don't know if the right words are I was set up to fail. I don't know what the right thing is, but a lot of the blame does. I mean, I don't feel bad saying it. A lot of the blame does go on them, but I'll accept it. I'll accept some on my part too, because maybe I could have broke through. Maybe I could have done some things different. I tried to communicate with enough higher ups that I felt like, hey, I'm at least trying to communicate with them and seeing where we can go. But man, just it was a bad time and bad all around.
I'm going to chime in here, Chris, and say 0% of it is your fault. You can be the nice guy at the end of the day and say that it's no. You had everything, all your moves taken away from you. No one even tried to come up with a decent idea for you. You weren't even able to be yourself whatsoever. You tried as hard as you could to communicate with Umaga, with management. You did everything you possibly could. It was all just totally against you. So 100% blame goes to them. And that's the end of the story. I'm not allowing you to have that as an answer. So,
well, thank you, Carl. I really appreciate that, man.
No worries, bro. And look, we knew we were going to have to talk about that run at some point. And you beat James Curtis nearly a month later after the Armando match in Atlanta. When did the release come? Did they call you and say that this wasn't working out, or did you call them and say that obviously this isn't working out? I want to leave. What was that situation?
Well, it was probably the worst year of my life. I was in a funk. I was going down a dark path. I for being in the biggest wrestling company in the world and somebody that lived wrestling. I mean, that was all I wanted to do. Had such a passion for it. I can't believe these guys had enough control to break that down. I felt like I could break through anything, and this company, I kind of compared it. And in no way am I saying I've never been in the military or anything like that, but it's almost like when you go into the military and they just break you down to where they can build you back up into their soldier. And going in there, I felt like that they just wanted to break everything out of me. And at this point, I mean, I went in there and I'd been in the business 15 years. So, I felt like, I kind of established myself, maybe in my head, but I had established myself so I could, go in there and, put me in the ring with anybody and I'll get in there and do my thing. But, it was just, all around, it was bad. I was going down a dark path, and then I had my match with Curtis. I think that was a match where, again, they were, I felt like a robot, man. They were just trying to program me into, what to do in the ring. And it just didn't feel like me. It wasn't me. I don't blame any of it on Curtis. He was there trying to get a spot as well. The only bonus of that match was, again, they were looking for a finish. And I suggested the Perfect Plex. Right. It was just in the back of my mind. It was something that, kind of shot in there. And I figured they'd turn it down for that reason, because it was Kurt's move. And plus, just a little side note, but Joe, his son, Curtis Axel, was coming up in the Tampa promotion. So I felt like they might have shut that down too, but they were cool with it. So I finished the match with the Perfect Plex. I remember after the match, it was not good. that was the match. I think I was throwing a bunch of clotheslines. They were adding time, cutting time, adding time, cutting time. Which and a lot of people will say this, in the wrestling business, you got to be ready for that. I mean, that's part of being a good worker is, you got to be able to adjust to the time. But I almost felt like they were fucking with me. I don't remember how much time we had, but it just kept adding time and then cutting it. And it just, when you're in the ring and I'm already can't do what I normally do, and I'm trying to, be programmed by that. It was a mess. So I was not happy with the match. I remember coming back. I think Johnny was one of the guys I talked to, but I tried to stay positive. I was telling him, I was like, look, it didn't feel right, but I'm willing to work. I'll keep working harder. I'll make it work. And I just kept trying to be positive, even though it was falling fast. And I think it might have just been a couple days later. I don't know if that was Monday, Tuesday, or what, but a couple days later, I was sitting in my home, and I got a call from Johnny, and he said we're going to exercise our right to release. And the funny thing is, man, a lot of guys when they get released from their contract, that's the worst thing that could happen to them, to their career. That just leads to nothing good. I was so relieved, man. I wanted out of there so bad. I've told this story before, but it's worth repeating because it shed some light on it. I remember I was out on my deck talking to Johnny in this conversation. It wasn't a long conversation. But as soon as I was done, the girl I was dating at the time, I came back inside in my living room, and she looked at me, and I told her I got my release. And she said that was the first time I had smiled in months.
Wow.
So for that to be the first thing she said, it was like, even from an outsider, she's looking at it like, you could tell the relief off my face. I just wanted out of there so bad. And which is a shame, man, because, I made it there. That was a goal of mine in my career. And it just didn't go the way I wanted, the way I'd hoped for. And, but yeah, I wanted out of there so bad. And that was the best thing for me, man. It still took me a long time to crawl out of this dark hole that I had been in. I kind of went through a depression after that, just because I didn't know where I was going with my wrestling career. But the end result is, they gave me my release. Well, I didn't ask for it. They told me they were going to release because for whatever reason on their part, but I certainly didn't fight it. I wasn't trying to argue or anything like that. Hey, can I come back sometime? Nothing like that. I wanted out, and I never wanted to go back.